Tonight, chaos at the top of government. Wes Streeting is accused of launching a leadership plot. He's denied it and accuses Downing Street of briefing against him. Number 10 are trying to dampen down the row, saying it didn't come from behind that famous black door, suggesting allies of the Prime Minister were to blame. Wes Streeting's robust denials have left many in Westminster wondering whether the fiasco has actually left him strengthened and the Prime Minister weakens.
2 weeks from a budget, the government has descended into civil war.
I've never authorised attacks on cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their jobs.
Also tonight, breaking news and more bad news for Sir Keir Starmer. He's had to apologise to his ethics advisor. We'll bring you the details. Also ahead tonight, the White House is accusing the Democrats of trying to smear Donald Trump by selectively leaking emails from the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Thousands of files have been released. We'll bring you the latest. And as speculation mounts on who could take over from Keir Starmer if the ball was to fall from the scrum, so to speak, we'll look at the previous set of prime ministerial predictions which have emerged today. Well, Ranil Jayawardena, Baroness Hazariki and Andrew Fisher will be with us for the next hour. I'm predicting top-quality debate and analysis tonight. It's Wednesday. I'm Darren McCaffrey, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. A very good evening. Well, what a mess for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. Such a mess that it feels a long time ago since this.
That is the choice at this election. Service or self-interest. Stability or chaos. A Labour Party that has changed or a Tory party that has run away from the mainstream. The choice is yours. You can stop the chaos. You can turn the page. You can join with us, and together we can rebuild our country.
Well, the last 24 hours have been anything but chaos. And if you voted for Labour at the last election in the hope that the infighting that has dogged governments for the past decade would be over, well, let's be honest tonight, you've been pretty badly let down. This time yesterday, allies of the Prime Minister were actively briefing journalists, pretty much out of the blue, that Sir Keir Starmer would fight any challenge to his leadership, which might come as soon as the budget. Now, those briefings have gone so badly, frankly, quite laughably badly, that they have backfired and have actually damaged the Prime Minister today. They've brought to the surface and almost legitimised any future challenge, which now seems very likely, by accepting those at the heart of government recognise that there is a problem with Keir Starmer's leadership. But in the more immediate term, what does the Prime Minister actually do next? Having branded the briefings as unacceptable, surely he has to sack whoever was behind it. He said as much today. And if he claims he never authorised these attacks, which he also said, well, that doesn't bode well for his so-called grip on those closest to him in Downing Street. Ultimately, it's a complete ungoal for a Prime Minister who, as you just saw, promised to turn that page on chaos. Well, our political editor, Beth, Rigby, has tonight's first report.
These are gloomy days. Downing Street in a crisis of its own making after Number 10's attempts to see off any post-budget leadership challenge badly backfired.
Is the Health Secretary a traitor or a faithful Prime Minister? Are there any traitors in Number 10, Prime Minister? Good morning.
The Prime Minister under real pressure after his allies warned that Keir Starmer would fight any attempted coup, with some anonymously dropping Wes Streeting in as the plotter-in-chief, triggering a backlash the Prime Minister's team did not intend.
I think whoever's been briefing this has been watching too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the worst attack on a faithful. It's totally self-defeating briefing, not least because it's not true. And I don't understand how anyone thinks it's helpful to the Prime Minister either to suggest he's fighting for his job. I do think that going out and calling your Labour MPs feral is not very helpful. I do think that trying to kneecap one of your own team when they are out not just making the case for the government, but actually delivering the change that we promised. I think that is also self-defeating and self-destructive behaviour.
And the man it really hurt wasn't Wes Streeting, but the Prime Minister, turning up in the Commons armed with an olive branch.
Any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable. In relation to Health Secretary, he promised before the election that in the first year of a Labour government we'd deliver 2 million extra appointments. We didn't deliver 2 million, or 3 or 4. We delivered 5 million extra appointments. He's doing a great job, as is the whole of my cabinet.
A clear show of support for Streeting, the PM less clear about the man leading his number 10 operation as Kemi Badenoch goaded him.
Mr. Speaker, what we heard the Health Secretary say this morning was that he wants to cut waiting lists, but we all know that there's only one waiting list that he really wants to cut. These attacks came from number 10, nowhere else, his toxic number 10. The person responsible for the culture in number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their jobs. This is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we delivered. The fastest growth in the G7.
Deafening jeers met that claim. This lot look beaten, and their opposition know it. Some in the cabinet, though, trying to push on.
Has the Prime Minister lost control, and is there a toxic environment within number 10?
No, I don't accept that at all. Across the whole cabinet, led by the Prime Minister, we're getting on with the job.
It's been a messy, almost farcical 24 hours as attempts by the Prime Minister's allies to shore up his position and see off a potential leadership challenge has backfired in a spectacular fashion and left him looking even weaker ahead of a difficult budget. And look, all of it matters because the chatter is real. A growing number of his MPs are worried about Keir Starmer's ability to lead Labour into the next general election. All this saga does is reinforce those doubts and make the November budget and the May local elections doubly dangerous for the PM. The Prime Minister trying to front this up, but his political capital draining away fast, and he's got even harder days ahead.
Well, as you can see, we have got Beth with us and indeed our superstar panel tonight who we're going to talk to in a second. But first, let's bring in Beth on all of this. I mean, what an extraordinary 24 hours. Where do you think we stand tonight? Where does the Prime Minister stand tonight?
I think you can safely say that the Prime Minister has been badly damaged by this, as has his number 10, and he's in a weaker position. There are still questions about if he says that he does not tolerate these briefings, that he doesn't endorse them, that he is not behind them. Who is? How is it happening? And how is he going to get a grip of his number 10? And I think Wes Streeting threw down the gauntlet this morning as he professed his loyalty to the Prime Minister, but also said people need to be held accountable for that. So there is bloodletting, and I don't think that that problem has gone away. So he's got an immediate problem about party management of his cabinet, and also has he got a grip of his operation in number 10.1. I think there's then a bigger picture, Darren, and actually what is so extraordinary about this story is there has been chatter, and I've had lots of it in recent days, about whether or not a challenge could be coming sooner rather than later, if at all. Why? Because of nervousness around the budget. 2 manifesto promises actually about to be broken probably. One is on the matter of income tax, raising income tax. And then the other is the decision potentially to lift the 2-child benefit cap. Now, whilst Labour MPs will like that, the Prime Minister said very clearly before the election he couldn't afford to do it. Yeah. And I've got the tape. I did the interview. He said, I cannot afford to do it. And so there's 2 manifesto promises, really, or pledges that are quite key to them that are about to be broken. So there's nervousness about how vulnerable that leaves him. I think, actually, though, what is astonishing to me about this is when you speak to people about what might really be going on, there is no doubt that there is plotting going on in the sense of there is a settled view amongst some in the party that Keir Starmer is not the right leader to lead the Labour Party into the next general election. But it's quite a long way away, right? And then I think flowing from that, it's kind of the ballot box test, probably at the May elections. Does that become the moment of jeopardy and the moment where there might be a conversation about Keir Starmer, is it time for you to step aside? And then do the runners and riders really line up and get into a race? But actually, Number 10 have kind of blown this all up.
So
it's like a self-inflicted wound. They've blown it up ahead of the budget. And everyone's kind of going, why have you done that? Because the likelihood of actually people... Can you imagine a Labour Party collapsing a Labour government's budget? How does that help a would-be successor? It would be absolute chaos.
Do you think a challenge, though, now is not just likely, it's probably inevitable at some stage in the next, well, let's say 6 months, 9 months?
I think... If you row back from that question, which I don't want to answer, I do want to answer. If you row back from the question, what you're actually saying is, are the fundamentals changing to change the fate of Keir Starmer? Why would there be a leadership challenge? Because people think he's not a good leader. Does Number 10 look like it's been led well today? They think he's not charismatic. Did you see how Wes Streeting performed on the media today versus the Prime Minister? And he's not a good communicator, and that actually he's not on the front foot and he's not selling this Labour government and the Labour story, and the polls are terrible. And now he's about to break manifesto pledges. So if you look at the fundamentals and you're a Labour MP, you might be thinking, is this going to get better or worse? So in terms of a leadership challenge, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I haven't got a crystal ball. But what I would argue is that the fundamentals are looking more difficult for Starmer as time goes on, not easier. And I think the ballot box test is really the moment that really focuses the mind. So, Darren, I don't know if there will be a leadership challenge, but I think that it is out there, it's being discussed, people are
really
thinking
put out there by Number 10
it.
today.
And I don't think that the past 24 hours has done anything to shore up the Prime Minister's position. I think it's actually left him more damaged. I don't think that was the intention of those around him that were trying to brief this stuff out, but that is the end product. And that's all the politics at a time when he's facing a really difficult budget in which he's going to break, really, the manifesto promises on which the whole Labour sell was made to the public in the general election.
OK, Beth, as always, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there, our political editor. And, of course, the story is going to feature, I'd say, pretty heavily in tomorrow's papers, if you were to ask me. And we've got our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. We'll be joined tonight by Adam Bolton, of course, the political commentator and the former First Minister of Northern Ireland, that is Baroness Arlene Foster. That's from 10:30 tonight here on Sky News. Aisha, I'm going to come to you first, which I'm sure you're absolutely delighted about. I mean, I called it a mess. I mean, you must be. Are you kind of crying or tearing your hair out, or both?
I think I'm just absolutely bewildered at the complete idiocy of what has just happened. The Labour Party is having a really difficult time right now, and there's lots of kind of reasons for that. The party is about to go into an incredibly defining moment with the budget, and, you know, as Beth set out, there's a lot of difficult decisions that need to be made. And I don't know who around Keir Starmer, which kind of idiot boy around Keir Starmer thought it would be helpful to go out and do this briefing. It's almost like, are they a sleeper cell for Wes Streeting at the heart of Downing Street? It's almost like a reverse Andy Burnham that has been done. You know, that is how utterly inept this is. And I think that what Keir Starmer has got to do is, and I understand that Number 10 is going to try and have some investigation into, you know, who's done this. But this idiot has done nothing to help Keir Starmer and has completely destabilised the party.
When you talk about this idiot, is your understanding that it is Morgan McSweeney?
I don't know who it is. I genuinely do not know. And lots of people are speculating. I genuinely do not know. But whoever this person is, they have done their boss, Keir Starmer, and they've done the party huge damage at a really, really difficult moment. And MPs in the Labour Party are really worried about what their constituents are going through. We've got a massive, we've got economic crisis, got a cost of living is really squeezed, our public services. There's some really, really difficult challenges ahead. And this is not the kind of mindless distraction. And it was just such a stupid, self-defeating thing to do. Everybody knows that there are challenges. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this and spin that there's no... As Beth said, look, I would describe there was a kind of there was a simmering going on in terms of people being upset, and it's no surprise, MPs sitting on quite thin majorities. They're looking at how well other parties are doing reform, etc. They are feeling kind of nervous. But what Number 10 has done, or whoever it is, has moved a simmer and set the whole thing ablaze, and it's really stupid.
Now, you must be not just joyous, but I was wondering if you've got any advice, given the fact that you've been through quite a few of these in government, it must be said.
Yeah, look, I've been there, done that, sadly. And this isn't a good look. And it's bad for the Labour Party. It's also bad for the country. We need the government, whether we like the policies or not, to provide stability ahead of the budget. We're 14 days out from this budget or something like that. And, right now, there's a sense of Number 10 having totally lost control of what it's doing. Whether it is a case of a sleeper cell for Wes Streeting, or whether it is someone going out to kneecap him, whatever the case may be, if the Prime Minister does not have control of what's going on in Number 10, that's very bad news, not only for the Labour Party, but for the country. And, what he needs to do right
You're saying
now,
it's kind of damaging for politics overall?
Damaging for everything, but, of course, particularly for the Prime Minister. And what he's got to do is the advice I'd give is he's got to stand up to his MPs on things like welfare reform. He said he wanted to do that. He needs to actually get on and deliver it. He needs to make sure that those in Number 10 are actually serving the public interest rather than political interests that they might personally hold. And he needs to make sure that actually everyone in his cabinet is working for the same shared agenda. And if they're not, he needs to stand up to them and send them off.
One of the suggestions, and we might get this later on, is lots of MPs, maybe even lots of the cabinet, aren't entirely sure what that shared agenda actually is, which I think personally is one of the root causes for why we are in this kind of leadership trouble, if you like. Andrew, of course, you worked for Jeremy Corbyn, so you're also used to MPs plotting, if you like. What's your sense of what's gone on?
I think it's different from when MPs were plotting against Jeremy Corbyn, because that was about policy. Fundamentally, they didn't like the direction of the Labour Party under Jeremy, and you've seen Keir Starmer row back from that over the last 4 or 5 years. But what happened, and this is the fundamentals, I agree with you, is Labour got elected on a manifesto that was a work of fiction. It said, basically, the economy just needs better management. We're not going to put up taxes. We don't need a huge investment in public services to make up for the years of austerity. The economy, just needs better people, the grown-ups back in charge. And they got into government and realised, actually, public services are on their knees. There's a cost of living crisis which requires big changes, big redistribution of wealth if we're going to get out of it, and an economy that hasn't grown properly since the banking crash. And no party, and you look at this, Keir Starmer is failing at it right now, but before him, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, David Cameron, never got the economy growing consistently. That is the fundamentals, and that's why they've all been fairly short-lived. They failed. And we have got an economy that isn't working. People's living standards are more squeezed than ever. Public services haven't noticeably got better.
The argument, though, here, Andrew, is that, from the Conservatives and elsewhere, is lots of our spending is now being eaten up by the national debt. You have to cut spending. And the Labour Party, not necessarily the Prime Minister or the Cabinet, but the backbench MPs aren't prepared to allow that to happen.
Well, I think you've got two choices, haven't you? If you've got growing debt, and our debt is not out of sync with the rest of the G7, it's not.
But we're not spending, £80 billion a year, whatever, servicing it.
Yeah, of course we are. And so is the US on the same, obviously on a much bigger scale, because they're a much bigger economy. So is Germany, so is France. This is not unique to the UK. What you have to do is take a choice. Yes, you can look at cutting things, or you can look at putting up taxes. In the short term, longer term, you want to get the economy growing. That's the thing that actually none of the previous, 5 or 6 governments have managed to do. And in that sort of morass, where Labour doesn't look like it's got a shared agenda, doesn't look like it's got a plan, people are sort of jockeying for position, saying, Keir Starmer's got to go. Well, what's Wes Streeting's platform? What's anybody else who's jockeying about? And they are manoeuvring behind it. What's their platform?
And just look on that point, which is very important.
Do you at least accept that actually the Labour Party, from my outside view, if I was asked to sum up what Labour want to do, I'm not entirely sure I could succinctly sum it up. And I do this as a job. So do you mean there's no... I don't quite know where Labour want to get to with all of this.
Well,
Is
look,
that fair?
I think one of the big things is just to take a step back, and for all the people who are sort of plotting and, thinking about whether, who's up and who's down and whether they're going to put themselves forward, Labour doesn't win elections very often. There's been 58 Prime Ministers. Of them, only 7 have been Labour, and of them, only 5 have ever actually won a general election from the Conservatives. Keir Starmer is that 7th person. And I do take what Andrew said. Andrew's outlined, I think, very eloquently the big, deep structural problems facing politics and our economy and our society. And I suppose what I would just say to people and Labour colleagues is, even if you suddenly change Keir Starmer, or you transport somebody else in, the fundamental difficulties will be there. There isn't a magic money tree. There's not something, wave away a magic wand to get rid of our debt and all that kind of stuff. The fundamentals still exist.
But the question is that, that Britain, I think, needs kind of radical action, needs a bold vision. And the criticism I hear of Keir Starmer is kind of continuity Sunak. I mean, essentially, is not prepared to take... Like, we've seen this with the Winter Fuel Alliance, we've seen this with Social Security, saying we need to cut public spending and then kind of backs away from it.
Yeah, I take that criticism, but then there's loads of other things that they have done that everyone is, on the Conservative side, because that's politics, are really screaming blue murder about, saying you've done this, it's too radical, non-DOMs, all of that kind of stuff. So I suppose you can't have it, but you can't say somebody's not doing anything and then say, oh my goodness, they're doing all this radical stuff and everyone hates it.
Just briefly on this, though, just in terms of your experience in government, or just the overall thing, because I want to pick up on your sense that this is not good for politics overall. Keir Starmer did win an election. You might not have liked it, but he did. He won a thumping majority. He was on the ballot paper, essentially. Shouldn't he just serve his full term, irrespective? Should we, as a country, get into this almost routine now of changing prime ministers mid-term?
Look, we shouldn't get into a routine of changing, but equally we shouldn't have a hard and fast rule, because things do crop up. It's important whoever is Prime Minister has the confidence of the House of Commons, but the problem here is that time and again he has put party before country, and that's a big problem for us all. What I would say about what Andrew said was that, actually debt here is rising faster than any other G7 country, and that's a big problem. The unemployment rate now is higher than it has been any time since the pandemic. These are big problems. So it's not been continuity, and he's got to tackle those things, like with welfare reform, where the Conservative Party has said that we would give him the votes.
But let's be very clear. Doing what the Conservative did, which had a revolving door of Prime Ministers, did not solve any of those problems.
But the problem is
you had a revolving door and it didn't solve any of those problems.
And that's exactly what you're doing now. The fact is...
Nothing's happened. Nothing has happened.
But now that you guys are looking inward at your own party and arguing amongst yourselves, I've been there, I've seen that, this is the beginning of the end for the Labour Party already.
Well, let's see. I think let's just see what happens. But I really hope that the Labour Party looks at the mistakes that the Conservative Party made in terms of just thinking, changing people willy-nilly sort of would solve all the problems. That was actually really, really bad for the party and for the country.
Well, I actually agree with that. I agree with that.
OK, right, we'll pause there for a second. Because unsurprisingly, we could go on all night about this, and we will. But first, I did speak to the Health Minister a little earlier about the pretty extraordinary 24 hours or so, including that plot to replace the Prime Minister, it seems. Let's have a listen to my interview with Karen Smith a little earlier. Karen, thank you very much indeed for doing this. We will come on to talk about health in a moment, but I do have to ask you, obviously, about the main story today. Which is what's happening inside Downing Street. It's pretty clear there is a bit of a toxic atmosphere, isn't there, inside Downing Street, given all the briefings we've seen in the last 24 hours.
So I do want to talk about health, and that's what we're focused on, and that's what Wes Streeting is out in Manchester today talking to NHS leaders. Look, I understand there's other stuff going on, and I think it needs to stop. I've got no time for it. I never have. When I was an activist back in Bristol under the last Labour government, I used to be shouting at my television or shouting at my radio. So that's where I am, and we are very much focused on delivering the change that we promised for people in the health service, and that is what Wes Streeting is doing today.
but in saying that, clearly some people are not focused on that because they are briefing
well,
against
they don't have enough
ministers.
time. You know, they don't have enough to do. So I think they need to be much more focused.
Does the Prime Minister need to sack someone?
Look, that is up to him. He's very focused. You know, I've worked very closely with Keir Starmer. I was his PPS during the Brexit years. He is a very focused person. He's got no time for this stuff either. So I'm sure he will make sure that we're all focused on what people want to talk about, which is about the health service.
Indeed,
and that is what Wes is out doing today.
Indeed, but we can only focus on these things if government operates. What's very clear, and I say this because it is very clear, that inside Downing Street, things are not working, and they haven't worked for a while. The greatest sign of something that's not working is a churn of staff. Downing Street loses people left, right and centre, and has done since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Let's be honest about this. We know this, your colleagues know this, Downing Street is not working.
So government is working. That is why
are they briefing against each other?
Government is working. That is why we're out making the changes to the health service. Keir Starmer appointed all of us in the health team to get on with the job. We were very privileged to be asked to do the job in July 2024, confirmed in the recent reshuffle to get on with the job because we are delivering those extra GP appointments. We've delivered 5 million more appointments than we said we would do. We are out today talking about the next stage of those changes, about modernising the health service, making the changes we promised, bringing NHS England and the department together, reducing duplication, getting more stuff to frontline services, supporting staff to get that services, the change that people really want. That is government working. I understand there's other stuff going on, and that's very interesting to people here in Westminster at the moment. And it's right that it stops. It's right that it stops.
This story came about
but
because
we are very
someone
focused.
in Downing Street, or some people in Downing Street, decided to actively call up journalists.
Yeah, and they should not do that.
So when you say it needs to stop, how can it be stopped?
Well, that is beyond my pay grade. My job is to...
You're a Labour MP, you've got a view
and it needs to stop. So that is my view as a Labour MP.
How does it stop?
That is up to the Prime Minister to decide how he wants to run the rest of his government, and that is up to him. And he is very focused on making sure that we're always focused on the priorities of the British people.
Do you have full confidence in Keir Starmer?
Yes. So let's get on with the job that we all want to do, that we are doing.
Do you think he should lead Labour into the next election?
Yes.
He's the most unpopular Prime Minister in British history.
I have total confidence in Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Why do you think he is?
And we are going to keep focusing on what we need to be doing, which is delivering the change that people want to deliver.
Why do you think
and when they see the change that we are delivering and they feel it in their pockets and they see it in what we're doing in the health service, which they're already starting to do, that is what we will take into the next general election.
Why do you think he is so unpopular? You talk to your constituents. I assume that lots of them don't like him. What are you hearing on the doorstep? Why does every single opinion poll show he's the most unpopular Prime Minister?
Well, there are a lot of opinion polls which I don't look at, and I do talk to my constituents every week when I'm in Bristol, and they email me regularly. And genuinely, what they are focused on is what is happening day to day in their lives, and they are very realistic, actually, about how tough it is to change round government. They're actually quite realistic about the depth of the changes that we need to make. So they are like, well, you know, we don't like a lot of things, we want things to change, we gave you a chance, get on with it.
OK, let's talk about the health reforms. What are you trying to achieve here?
We are bringing together NHS England, together with the Department of Health, to reduce duplication. We've effectively got 2 head offices, so we're reducing that duplication. And we're also making changes to these bodies that were set up under previous government called ICBs. They're regional bodies that have had not very clear roles, and there's a lot of duplication. So we're reducing that headcount by 50%, making them much more focused on what the wider population wants from its health services, rather than duplicating a lot of tasks.
And a lot of this, from what I can see, is redundancy, or trying to entice people to redundancy. Isn't one of the problems that we've seen elsewhere in government is that when you lose experience, as we've seen in the Ministry of Justice, that is not a good thing. Is there a risk here that you actually, in order to save money and bring down numbers, that you lose experience that could get the health service, a bit like the prison service, in trouble in years to come?
We are really conscious of that. I'm a former NHS manager myself. I've been through these sorts of changes, and the need for us to make sure we hold on to talent, that we're very focused on what the task of these organisations is, to reduce the duplication, to make sure people are very much focused on delivering that change to frontline care services, including digital, that we retain the talent we need and make sure the right people are in the right jobs in the right place. So we are conscious of those sorts of risks, and what the Secretary of State is doing today, because because there has been a time lapse that we would rather not happened between the announcement of the changes and that clear delivery, is saying to those people, you know, we value the work that you're doing, we would like it to happen quicker because it creates uncertainty, but now let's all get together and build on the massive changes that we've made in the first year.
Well, it never rains, but it pours, it must be said, for this Labour government at the moment, because in the last hour or so, more bad news for the Prime Minister. He's had to apologise for signing off the appointment of England's football regulator. And as you can see, John Craig, our chief political correspondent, is with me in the studio. John, just explain what's gone on here.
There's been a cronyism row over this appointment for months. His name is David Cogan, and we learned last week in a report into Lisa Nandy giving him the go-ahead to take up this job when he gave her election campaign money, that he's donated a total of £33,410 to the Labour Party in recent years. Now, what we've learned today is that the Prime Minister, who up to now has said, oh, nothing to do with me, Lisa Nandy's appointment, well, he was asked to give it his approval. And there's exchange of letters here between the Prime Minister and the busy Sir Laurie Magnus, the city grandee who's the ethics advisor. The Prime Minister has admitted, he says, let me read you what he says. He said that he confirmed he was... The note asked me whether I was content. I confirmed I was supportive. Then he says, I knew that the decision was her, that Secretary of State, was for the Secretary of State to take, that's Lisa Nandy. I replied on the basis the decision had been taken. In retrospect, it would have been better if I'd not been given the note or confirmed I was content with the appointment. This was an unfortunate error for which I express my sincere regret. And later on in the letter it says, I had received 2 donations from Mr Cogan, which dated back to my campaign to run for the Labour Party leadership. My constituency Labour Party, that's Holborn and St Pancras, also received a donation around the time of the last general election. So, a donor to Sir Keir and also Lisa Nandy. Well, what Sir Laurie says, he says in reply, it's regrettable, as you say in your letter, despite talks we had earlier, that you say you were content with the appointment. Now, that word regrettable we're hearing a lot recently. It was used about the Rachel Reeves' licence to rent out her property. The Tories, as you can imagine, they've been calling this a cronyism row for ages. Tonight, Alex Burghardt, who's actually complained about this appointment of Mr Cogan as the football regulator. Incidentally, a lot of people in football say, what on earth do you need a football regulator for? I remember when it was going through the Lords, you'll probably remember, it struggled, didn't it? There was a lot of opposition. Anyway, Alex Burghardt says, Sir Keir Starmer himself has been caught offside, signing off the appointment of a major donor to a powerful new role. This isn't just sloppy, it's a serious lapse of judgment from a man who promised integrity and transparency. Another, yet more scandal at the heart of his government. Amidst open civil war, a reference to today's events in the Labour Party, the Prime Minister doesn't have the backbone to control his own administration or simply doesn't care. Okay. And let me tell you about James Cleverly very briefly. James Cleverly says, I don't think Starmer is going to make his 2nd anniversary as PM. There you go.
When's that? Next July. Andrew, the problem here almost for Starmer is that the Conservative Party found themselves in quite a lot of trouble before the election, and he was saying, we're going to be whiter than white, we're going to, change things. And yet, these stories in themselves, not necessarily the most significant, but they're starting to accumulate quite a lot. As John said, that word regrettable starting to be used quite a lot.
Look, I think it doesn't pass the sniff test, does it? I mean, look, man donates thousands and thousands of pounds to the Labour Party, to the Labour leader and to the person who's appointed Culture Secretary, and then gets appointed by both of them to a fairly, significant role in English life, as it will become. I think a lot of people would think that's not right. I mean, minor indiscretions, if you're on benefits, you get penalised, you get sanctioned. A lot of people in their daily life will think, wait a minute, I can't do things like that. I can't get away with that sort of behaviour. If I break the rules a little bit, if I'm a carer for somebody who's disabled, my loved one, and I earn, 2 pence over the limit, I lose every single bit of benefit. These people are getting away with it.
Just briefly on this, guys, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I have to say, the point here is hypocrisy. You can't say with one hand, the Conservative Party, whatever the accusation might have been, whether it was someone dropped a paperclip and didn't pick it up, this is outrageous, you must resign, and now find yourselves in this position where suddenly everything is just regrettable, but we'll gloss over it. And, yes, you're right, Darren. In the great scheme of things, was anything done here that was fundamentally wrong, and might they have not reached the same decision anyway? Who knows? But the point is, they said they were going to be whiter than white, and this is not it.
I'd probably slightly dispute the fact that what the Conservatives did was like just dropping a paperclip. I think some of that was...
I was making the point. I was making the point that whatever the claim... Dare I say, if a Conservative Prime Minister and Conservative Culture Secretary had done exactly this, what would Keir Starmer have said? Well, resign.
Boris Johnson
why
took
have they
a loan
not done
from
the same?
the guy he wanted to get into be chair of the BBC.
And what did they say?
So I think we've established that the magnitude of what the Conservatives did was in a completely different league. However, I do agree with what Andrew said in terms of, if you come in saying that, you want to have very high standards of integrity, you do have to go, I think, over and above making sure that is the case. I suppose what Keir Starmer has done, which is the right thing, is, Laurie Magdson, who's a very, very busy man, he's solving the productivity puzzle at the moment, he's so busy. Everything is getting referred to him very, very quickly. Yeah. And
I will say, at least he has an ethics advisor, unlike another Prime Minister.
But I accept Andrew's point. It's not great.
OK, right. We're going to pause on Labour leadership for the moment, because there's also another major breaking news story this afternoon, and that, of course, is from the United States. Questions about Donald Trump's relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein has again been called into question after newly released emails showed that Epstein saying that Trump, and this is a quote, knew about the girls. The emails, made public by Democrats on the House's Oversight Committee in the US Congress, also include one written by Epstein in 2011, where he says that Trump had spent hours at his house with a victim of sex trafficking. The White House has reacted tonight by accusing the Democrats of selectively leaking those emails to create a fake narrative to smear the US president.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins, who's in Washington for us tonight. David, what's the sense of significance, if you like, in DC this evening?
Well, you've heard there from the White House, they are doubling down on their view that this is a distraction tactic, that the Democrats are creating a fake narrative to smear the president. And Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, insisting that really the only thing the emails prove is that the president did nothing wrong. There's a lot of information we're trying to wade our way through, more than 20,000 pages of documents released by the Oversight Committee. Let's just have a look at some of those emails. There is a 2011 exchange between Epstein and his then girlfriend and co-accused Ghislaine Maxwell, in which he writes, "I want you to realise that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." And as you've just heard, the White House is claiming that that victim was the late Virginia Giuffre, who never accused the president of any wrongdoing. There's a 2019 exchange from Epstein to the author Michael Wolff, in which he writes, "Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Now, presumably he's talking about resigning from Trump's club because Trump claims he threw Epstein out for being what he describes as a creep. But we don't know the context of these words. Important to remember that Trump also accused Epstein of stealing staff from his Mar-a-Lago residence. And then there is one in 2015 from the author Michael Wolff to Epstein, in which he writes, if he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Now, there's a lot, as I say, to wade my way through, but the President in the last few minutes has also responded, posting on Truth Social that he believes the Democrats are trying to bring up what he calls the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, because they'll do anything to deflect from how badly they've done on the government shutdown. The Republicans, of course, believe this is all a distraction from the fact that there's going to be a critical vote on the Hill tonight, which could bring to an end that record 43-day government shutdown. But of course, if the government does resume, there is a potential pothole ahead for the administration, because a Democrat who's been unable to take up her office since she was elected 8 weeks ago will finally be sworn in, and her vote just might tip the balance on a discharge petition, which could lead to a vote on the Hill on the release of the Epstein files at last.
OK, David, live for us there in Washington. As always, thank you very much indeed, David Blevins. Well, let's bring in Mitchell Epner now. He's a former federal prosecutor who spent time prosecuting sex offenders. Mitchell, a very good evening to you. You have gone through some of these emails. What stood out to you this evening?
So the biggest thing that came out in these emails is that the proffer session that Ghislaine Maxwell did with Mr. Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, to great fanfare, and they released 2 days of transcripts, makes it pretty clear that Ghislaine Maxwell either lied or didn't remember the truth when she denied that she had discussions or conversations or communications with Epstein about Trump and his connection to all of this. That 2011 email about the dog that has not barked is pretty damning. And in my training and experience, a potential cooperating co-defendant like Ghislaine Maxwell would be treated and should be treated like toxic waste, cabined, tightly contained, because they could destroy everything that surrounds them. It appears to me that thus far, the Trump DOJ, unlike every predecessor of both parties, is acting to protect Donald Trump and his agenda, as opposed to following the training and experience that has guided the United States Department of Justice for about 250 years.
Mitchell, we will get to the point, of course, where essentially, as you have, our previous correspondent pointed out, that there may well be a vote on all of this. But what do you make of the White House's argument that, and David was making this point, context matters here, and these are quite selective emails that may read bad in one way, but that's why you need to see the full cachet?
So context is always important, but this strikes me as a person who's been accused of murdering somebody at a sporting event saying, well, I didn't kill any of the 20,000 other people who were spectators.
What do you mean by that, sorry?
What I mean is, if you have one thing that falsifies Trump's contention that he was not involved at all, the fact that the other 19,000 emails don't say anything on that topic really does not matter. And the White House spokesperson is grabbing at straws to find something to say to deal with this really horrible news for the White House.
I mean, the allegation of the email seems to be that it references Virginia Giuffre, so the Republicans, or the White House alleges, and she has been on the record previously, saying that she didn't have anything inappropriate in regards to President Trump.
All due respect, you're missing the point, and let me try to make it clear. The point is that up until now, Trump's line has been, that Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein never had any discussion about Trump's connection to any of this. That's not true. We know that's not true now. These emails show it's not true. The fact that the person who demonstrates that's not true said that Trump didn't do anything inappropriate with her really is irrelevant to the fundamental lie that's in play here.
Okay, just very finally on this, Mitchell, where do you think this goes next? How does this play out, if you like, in terms of the legal case potentially against President Trump, or indeed about whether we get to see all of these emails actually in full?
So there is no legal case against Donald Trump. He is guaranteed that his Department of Justice will not present a case against him. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that the DOJ essentially can't go after a sitting president. So that is not a real issue. The issue is, how does this play out in the court of public opinion? And I'm not an expert on that. I will say that this has been extraordinarily corrosive to Donald Trump's standing with his core advocates in the MAGA world, and in particular, the people who have made such a big deal out of the idea of Pizzagate and that there was some vast conspiracy amongst the government to protect pedophiles. It appears that the one pedophile cover-up that is going on relates to Donald Trump.
Well, Mitchell, obviously, of course, the US president has denied any wrongdoing, and we will see how this plays out in the coming days. Certainly going to dominate the news agenda in the United States. Mitchell Epner, thank you very much indeed for joining us from New York for your insight into that. Thank you. OK, you're watching the Politics Hub here on Sky News with my superstar panel tonight. And up next, we're going to be looking at some of the superstars who may well challenge Sir Keir Starmer for the leadership of the Labour Party. There they are. We're talking about that after the break. Stay tuned to Sky News.
Coming up on the UK Tonight at 8, we'll get the latest from Washington, where Donald Trump has spoken after the release of 20,000 documents relating to Jeffrey Epstein, plus a damning report into a notorious youth detention centre and an officer who could be the most prolific sex offender in British history. And tonight, we'll pay tribute to Baroness Newlove, the campaigner who became a voice for the voiceless when her husband Gary was murdered in 2007. All that and much more on the UK Tonight from 8.
Well, welcome back to Sky News. Let's return to the questions around Keir Starmer's leadership. Let's call it that rather than the Labour leadership. And there are lots of rumours about who potentially, though, could replace Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, if that coup were ever to happen. Let's have a look at some of the names jockeying for position, the ones that are being and have been discussed today. We've kind of come up with 5 of them, as you can see. On the left there is the current Health Secretary, much in the news today, Wes Streeting. Then there is the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. The newly elected Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, that's Lucy Powell. Also talked about being the Defence Secretary, John Healey, and a man who, of course, once used to be Labour leader, that is Ed Miliband. Now, you used to work for Ed Miliband, didn't you, Aisha? Would you run his campaign?
I'm surprised I was brought in a bacon sandwich.
I know this is a little bit of fun because, well, we say we're a long way from this. You know, if you listen to someone in Downing Street, it was apparently going to happen in a couple of weeks' time. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think this is the kiss of death for like anybody that's thinking of running. There isn't a leadership contest at the moment. I think anyone that puts their name forward right now is going to be in quite a difficult position. Look, I just think, going back to our conversation, if there is to be a change of leader, and remember, the Labour Party is not like the Conservative. It is not in our DNA to do this, right? Takes a very... I'm sceptical that this will happen.
You don't think it's going to happen?
I just don't think we didn't even get rid of Jeremy Corbyn.
Membership wouldn't let you.
Yeah, well, I tried, but people did, you know.
And
But
the
I
rules
just
have changed now, though. The rules have changed since then.
They've
Because
got
now
tougher.
it's down
They've
to...
got harder.
Well, tougher or not. You know,
No,
it's
they've
now
got harder.
It's down to only MPs, 80 MPs or something like
No,
that.
then it goes back to the membership.
But 80 MPs can trigger it in a
trigger
way.
the contest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. To trigger it is easier now. It's the MPs.
No,
that
it
do
hasn't.
that.
It's not.
It's not harder.
And-
it's not
harder.
easier.
Well,
It was lower.
No,
Yeah.
No, get your facts right on this.
It
It was-
required others to agree. Now the
No,
Labour Party,
that's
Labour
actually-
MPs
that's
can
actually
go
not
behind.
factually accurate.
It's not right.
It's not
Let's
actually
not
right.
get caught up in the process of... John Craig last night said I was being too pessimistic, and tonight he says we've missed a name of who might challenge.
Well, you've missed a few. You haven't got Angela Rayner there, who may be back in the fold by next year. You haven't got Andy Burnham there either, although perhaps he's blown his chances by being a bit too forward at the Labour Party conference. I just looked at the bookies' odds, actually. Wes Streeting is favourite with all the bookies, 5-1. Sky Bet's got Burnham 7-1. Lammy, he's not on the list either, he's 9-1. After last week's PMQs, I don't think so. Shabana Mahmood, not a bad price, 9-1. Ed Miliband, 11-1. Yvette Cooper, 12-1.
Okay.
You're just reading out the entire cabinet now.
Well, it could be any of them. What about Andrew? You?
Me? I think that would be a real shock to the system.
He's running.
As in...
For the Health.
Is Wes popular amongst the backbenchers, though?
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, I think he's one who polarises opinion. I don't think... He's definitely been trying to do some outreach. I mean, you speak to MPs, he's definitely been around the tea rooms, he's definitely been having chats. He's certainly, I know people have noticed on social media...
Are you suggesting that there actually might have been an attempt at a coup?
Look, there's a number of MPs that have been sounding people out and they've been on manoeuvres because there is a febrile atmosphere within the PLP for the reasons Aisha said at the beginning, which is the polling is terrible, people are worried about that, the elections next year are going to be bad, you know, and not just bad, they're going to be horrifically bad if the polling is to be believed. I mean, you look at Wales, Labour has only ever won in Wales, we're going to come third on current polling.
Yeah, they look like they might have lost.
That's
now,
terrible.
What I do want to show you, just before we go, though, is actually a clip that's kind of been around for a bit, but has gone slightly viral today, which is lots of MPs being asked about who they would think would be Prime Minister 10 years from 2018. So that's 2028. It was on Matt Ford's Unspun series. Just have a look at this. This is a whole lot of MPs thinking who will be Prime Minister in 10 years' time from 2018. It's quite a lot of...
The leader of the Labour Party. Another Conservative.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn, of course. Anyone but Jeremy Corbyn.
Louise Haigh.
Bridget Phillipson. Any old bloody Labour woman I'll take.
Undoubtedly Kemi Badenoch.
Gavin Williamson.
Amber Morris.
Rees-Mogg. How about that?
I think it would probably be me.
He's not lacking in confidence, is he?
I mean, first of all, Kemi Badenoch got mentioned there as well, which was quite interesting.
Tim Norton.
Yeah, Tim, good shout from Tim.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, the odds have probably lengthened now, haven't they, since then?
But the feeling sense is that Wes Streeting is the bit of the front runner. Is that fair?
Well, look, Wes Streeting, I think, is a very gifted communicator. I think he is an excellent. He's very, very good at creating a sort of political story, and he kind of, I think, connects well with people. So I think he is a very gifted communicator, but the fundamentals are still really tough.
What about Shabana Mahmood? Because actually, lots of people have been quite impressed with the new Home Secretary.
Yeah, I mean,
even within the Conservative Party, it should be said.
Well, again, she's certainly put the right sort of mood music out there, but the delivery is something that we're waiting to see, right? So the numbers of people coming in continues to be a problem. The fact that there have been so many problems in the prisons, that is something that David Lammy has inherited from her. So there are many questions still in terms of delivery. But I have to say, just on the point of there's no contest right now. I mean, the problem is the fact that we're talking about it. That is the problem.
Andrew, just briefly on this, sorry, the left. Where is the left? Because the party seems to be dragged to the left, but there are actually no kind of obvious left contenders there, are there?
No,
who would you like
really.
to see lead Labour in an ideal world?
As a very wise left leader once said, Tony Benn, it's policies, not personalities, and that's what needs to change. Fundamentally, the country needs a different direction, and unless that's on offer, the personality is fairly irrelevant.
And John, we've got about 30 seconds left. I'm going to leave the last word to you. This is a mess. It's not going to go away, is it?
Well, a left-wing candidate, we haven't mentioned Louise Haigh. She's a possibility as well. I just think it's funny, amusing, as well as funny odd, that a few months ago everyone was saying that Kemi Badenoch wouldn't survive. And now she's looking more assured at Prime Minister's questions, and it's Sir Keir Starmer who's on the ropes.
OK, you know what? It's been a lot of fun tonight, and we've been talking about some big, serious politics, though, future direction of the country. Thank you very much indeed, all, for joining us this evening over the last hour. That is it from me for tonight. We're back, of course, at 7 tomorrow. Join me then if you can. Up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah Jane Mee. Have a good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.